And I said, well, isn't that interesting? And he was looking up like that. And then we just continued that process and completed it. And I said to Sam, yeah, there's a ship up there. Do you see that? And he said, yeah, woo, it's all white. And I said, well, it's a ship. Check out who's running the ship. Go down into the engine room and see who's down there. And Sam, whoa, wow, whoa. He made a whole bunch of noises and gurgling noises. He closed his eyes like that. Suddenly he opened them up and he said, hey, there's angels down there. And I said, well, if there's angels down the bottom of the ship, that's something new, isn't it? And he wasn't in a normal talking state, but he said, angels is down there. And I said, well, who's driving it? And he went up, his eyes up and visualized again. He saw angels driving the ship, Jeffrey. And then I said, well, what do you think, Sam? Sam said, And I said, what do you mean? Sam said, I ain't going on that ship. And I said, why not? And he went inside like that, and I followed his eyes going down like that. And even put my hand on the bottom of his eyelids like that. I said, go down and find out why you're not going. Suddenly he opened his eyes and he said, I ain't going on that ship. He says, I got to get up at 8 o'clock in the morning. And I got to work. Sam has got to work. Sam has worked all his life. He's got to work. I'm a working man. So I said, good for you. And I said, but just before we go back to work, Sam, you want to check on the ship and see what it would cost to go on that ship and where's it going? So he went inside again with his eyes like that down. And Sam murmured to himself, wow, he said, that ship, that don't cost nothing. It was interesting. And he was very fascinated by that. He said, that ship don't cost nothing. He said it again. And then I said to him, and where's it going? He said, oh, he said, that ship, that's going to Bermuda. So I said, the ship doesn't cost anything? It's going to Bermuda? That's something, he said. That's really something. And I said, well, what do you think? I've been working a long time, he said. I said, well, what do you think? You want to take that ship? He went down again like that. He said, I'm going to think about that. I said, okay. And he closed his eyes and he went into a sleep state. That means he looked like he was just relaxed and sort of half snoring like that. And I went out to see my mother, and when I came back a few minutes later, Sam had apparently taken that ship to Bermuda. He had died. Yeah. He had made the decision to go on vacation. So you could say that he was stuck right there at the end of his life in a coma for a while, in part because he was working on himself and he needed the time to make the decision, can I take a vacation or not? It was really like a psychological development that he needed to make.
His self-concept as a worker, as a person who was always working, kept him from dying until that point.
That's right. He was fighting his situation and fighting his dying. So he had cancer and he was just bones, and it was in a wicked state. But not everybody who you work with in a coma dies. I must say that. That's just one of these cases where he made the decision himself to die. No one decided to let him die. He decided.
Well, it seems to me that the really fascinating thing about your work, I think our viewers would find it most fascinating, is that somehow you manage to find a channel inside.
Yeah.
And it could be the most subtle thing, like just a little muscle tremor. It needn't be as obvious as Sam's noises.
That's right. That's right. Some people in comatose state, they do the following things with their face. I'll see if I can do this. If your cameras can pick that up, I don't know. But their eyes are closed or jittering, or some people are in a vigil coma like this. Their eyes are wide open and their pupils are undilated. I can't do that here. But the most common state is like this. They'll be down there and just their right eyelid, that's this one, moves just a teeny bit like the following. Now, I can't do just the right eyelid alone, you notice, because I'm not in that state. Maybe we can do the left one. I can't.
But it's the subtlest of motions.
And then I put my finger there and just wiggle it as well, like that. And then you make contact with that particular part of the person. That part is awake.
Yeah.
Other people, I know you're not, maybe you can't see my hands. Other people will be like this, Jeffrey. Their hands are in a corticoid posturing, that's called, like this, from strokes, what have you, and they're grasping and cramped. And there's various viewpoints on why the hand does that. But one of them is that the hand is doing this in part because you've got a stroke and part of your body is doing this, and another is that this is This is a signal. This is how we work. So one thing we do is just gently grasp that hand and pull on it, just very, very little, like that. And through that, you can get contact with a person. Sometimes people will pull back, like this. And one thing leads to another, and before you know it, usually within about 20 or 25 minutes, if the person is not heavily drugged or on morphium, the person will come back, regardless of what the cause is of their coma. But those who are in dying conditions usually come back quicker. And those who have been in accident cases and things like that, and traumatic injuries to the brain and suffocation or oxygen deficiencies, you can still make contact with them, but they don't come back so that you can hear them right away. They don't speak instantaneously.
So you need to, I suppose, in some of the most severe cases where there's a lot of brain damage, you've got to have some facility at nonverbal communication. They may never verbalize for you.
That's right. Like, for example, a man we worked on recently who had been hit over the back of the head. He was a taxi driver. Someone hit him over the back of the head. And they had to do an operation. They took out a good, huge section of his head. So here you see my bald head like this, and then his was like a huge piece of skull missing. And he was in a coma, and they didn't know whether he should live or die or what to do with him. But I did just exactly this. Amy and I, my wife Amy, we grabbed his arm, and after a couple of minutes he was yanking backwards. On response, we would say to him, "What's happening?" And he would pull back like that. And then suddenly he started to wrestle within his limitations of lying in bed and using his strength. And suddenly his wife, who had been depressed, yelled out loud. She said, "There you go, showing off again." Imagine, he hadn't spoken to anyone for 3 months. And as he started to come back, he wasn't speaking, but he apparently had been a weightlifter. And he was showing us how strong he was still, even though he hadn't had any communication with anybody for months. So watching somebody's signals and taking them seriously is very important.
Well, what do you do if you've got some kind of nonverbal signal? How can it become meaningful? Don't you want to know what's going on inside?
Yes. Well, with people who have been injured because of accidents, it takes time before they're able to talk again. One has to be very patient. But with people who are comatose or have gone into sleepy states just before they die, they are not, I have to say this, they are not in these states, Jeffrey, just because they're sick and dying. They seem to be using these comatose states in order to find out more about themselves. They're deeply trying to work on themselves like Sam. So to help them create the meaning, first you work with their intimate signals like that. You breathe at their rate. If they're going, then you go ahead and follow that breathing.
Follow the breathing.
By putting your hand on their shoulder and pushing and squeezing and relaxing in accordance with their breathing. That's hard to show just here without getting up and doing it.
But sometimes you even climb into the bed with them.
Climb very close to them or put my head near their head. And because people in these states also love contact, you have to be careful and know the person and check out whether they're shy or whether for other reasons they don't want contact. But in some cases it's not necessary to do that, but others it is.